says, are you interested in adapting a book called Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone? Say yes!
Oh my God!
I want to tell you, you can change the world, but your own world, you will change, and you may need to do it more than once. And I can tell you something about that. I did not graduate from Emerson. I left as a sophomore. You have to remember, I was at Emerson a month before my 17th birthday. I had never been away from home. I had never been out of Brooklyn on a plane. I had never been anywhere except for maybe Jersey and the only place I ever got on LA, New York City. I was terrified and alone in a city I knew no one. And Emerson became the beginning of my life. It transformed me. It clarified what I wanted and what I needed to do at that time. It's also been responsible for some of the key moments that brought me here, that brought me to this career. It's at Emerson that I wrote my first monologue. I figured, you know, they audition all the time, and these people listening to the auditions, I mean, how many times can they hear Biff and Duff the Salesman? I thought if I wrote something original, that maybe they'd remember me and I would pop out. And then years later, I kept on doing it. And I got into a comedy act where I would write skit material and monologues, and then I would sell monologues to other actors as like an additional temp job. And it came to pass that my acting teacher in New York said she knew a director who was putting together an off-Broadway review called Hey, My Name is Alice. That was a collection of skits and monologues about women. She wanted to submit mine, and I said yes, and that was the first bit of writing I ever sold. And to this day, I still get checks for several friends for 12 cents. That moment changed my life. Changed my world again. I started writing more. A friend from Emerson, who was living in New York, married to a guy who was one of the original Saturday Night Live writers. He had just sold a screenplay to a producer. He liked my dialogue and my comedy skits, and he asked me to kind of apprentice his idea, which became Rude Awakening. His idea was much more brilliant than that, but we had an insane, abusive producer who for 3 years kept us rewriting and rewriting, not paying us, and he was smart enough to know that we were desperate and we would go along with that. I became impatient. I was hungry. I wanted my life to start. I was 26 years old. I had never earned a real living. I had done nothing but temp jobs. I was a waiter. I once had to dress up as Abraham Lincoln for a bank company. I wrote phone sex scripts for
Yes.
I was hungry. I wanted my life to start. And my wife suggested, I was married at the time, she had a real job. Thank you. She supported me and said, write a screenplay. Write your own. And I thought, and I got this idea, and I started writing it over a period of a couple of years. And I had no idea what I was doing. I had no confidence in what I was doing. I would start it and throw it away, and not look at it for 5 months. I'd pick it up, I'd throw the whole thing out, I'd keep the 2 characters, I'd rewrite a different version, I'd throw that away, I'd put it down, I'd pick it up. Anyway, long story short, by the end of June 1988, I had a complete screenplay called The Fisher King. It happened, however, to be finished in the middle of the longest writer's strike that ever existed. Which meant that nobody could read and nobody could buy. So at that point, I just looked up at God and said, your move. Because I'm doing the work. Nothing more I can do, I need a sign. 2 months later, the strike is over. 2 weeks after that, the screenplay gets sold, and I haven't stopped working. And there are 2 things I want to tell you about that. When it was sold, the executive at the studio said 2 things. First, he said, were you tripping when you wrote this? I said, no. Then he said, we studio people thought that, given that writers were off and they could do whatever they wanted, we expected them to take the time to write their passion project, to write that original idea, that story that they had to tell. He says, you cannot believe how many buddy cop movies we got. And because of that, this weird script rose to the top. Timing, opportunity, preparation, all those rules you hear about, they actually work. What I learned from that, though, was originality, especially now. Those writers wrote for the marketplace. They wrote for what they thought people wanted to sell, wanted to buy. Originality. That's why so many of us feel like outsiders. We have to be on the outside so we can see things other people can't see and tell those stories. Don't follow. Set trends. Lead us. Tell your stories or help others to tell theirs in your ways. A culture needs its creative people to tell its story, reflect itself, to reflect what's happening to us, to give us perspectives and images about who we are and where we're going, where we might go. And without those reflections, without those stories, a culture dies. Or at least it gets incredibly shallow and meaningless and starts remaking movies from 10 years ago because they're too frightened to make anything original. Risk. Don't be cool standing on the sidelines waiting for this to happen or waiting for that to happen. Nothing happens unless you risk. You cannot succeed in anything you are unwilling to fail at. That sounds like a green card, it probably is, but it's the truth. It's the truth. There's no shame. There is no judgment. If you love what you're doing and you make that the most important thing, every rejection, every failure is not an enemy. It's a challenge. It's a test. Think of weightlifting. You gotta lift weights to build up more muscle, to build up your bicep, let's say. Every rejection of a job or a piece of work, you're building up a muscle of commitment. It's as if it's saying, I dare you. You want this? You really want this? Hilary Swank told me that for over 6 years, at one point her mother and she were living out of a car, dropping quarters into a payphone, calling agents to try and see her. She went in after audition, never got. She told me after every audition, she'd say to herself, next one. I'm going to get the next one. I'm going to get the next one. And look what happened. Time and preparation, opportunity. Kimberly Pierce wrote, Boys Don't Cry. She searched for 3 years for an actress. Hillary was the only person who could play that part. And it happened. And I'm sure while she was struggling, there were friends going right by her, getting TV series and getting commercials, and she didn't compare herself to anybody else, which is another waste of time. You all have your own stories, you all have your own paths, your own roads. You make it up as you go along. It's a waste of time to compare yourself to anybody else's success or failure. Focus on your own. Don't follow money. Money follows success, and success follows work that you believe in. I can prove it. The producers who originally bought Fisher King blew my mind. They got it. We had gone away for a weekend, and we came home, and there were 18 messages from Hollywood, a call from Hollywood, these people I'd never heard of before. And they got it. I felt they got the writing, they got what I was going for. And they made me an offer, and things were going to start. In the midst of that, another studio offered double the amount of money. Now, both sums were more money than my father had ever seen in his lifetime. He was a cab driver. But this other offer was for double if I would rewrite it as a vehicle for a certain actor. Nobody was helping me. The agent wanted me to take the more money. You could change or evolve because they knew you so well. Stop thinking you have to know everything. Never stop being curious. Be selfish and listen, absorb. You know, I interviewed Martin Scorsese for a documentary, and he told me that Akira Kurosawa, one of the greatest filmmakers who ever lived, at 80 years old told him, you know, I'm just beginning to see the possibilities of film. Never stop being a student. Never stop being in a little bit an amateur who's beginning to keep that freshness. If you're not frightening yourself, you're doing something wrong. Because I tell you, fear never goes away. Never. I know every director I know works so hard to get a movie through the system, and it's tough. And when they get that yes, there's still that uh-oh. Is this going to work? Is anybody going to see this? It's your friend. You got to keep it beside you and move with it. It's time, it's perseverance, it's re-upping your commitment and having a work ethic and all that stuff you know. I'm telling you, keep the hunger alive within you. Self-pity, shame, and judgment are your enemies. Murder them. Tell yourself the truth. Be brutally honest with yourself. Without shame, without judgment. What your strengths are, what your talents are, what weaknesses you have, you need to change. If you can, change it. Take action. If you can't, embrace it. Make it a part of you. But be honest with yourself. I remember a girl in acting class, every week we had to do, our piece or what we were working on, and every week she did exactly the same thing. She got to say the same memory from cats.
No.
Now, set aside the fact that I hate cats, what made it worse was she would get up there and introduce, I just know that I'm going to sing this one day on Broadway. And you're looking at it going, honey, you're going to sing this at your cousin's wedding. That's pretty much what it is. So, be dead honest with yourself. Because the picture you have in your head of where you want to go might not happen that way. There might be an even better picture out there for you. I can attest to that myself, starting out as a theater and wanting to be an actor. There's another Emerson grad here, a friend of mine, Pam Abdi. She was here about 20 years after me. She was a dance major. She broke her knee second or third year. She walked into the film department on a crutch. She said, what do you guys do here? Cut to, she produced Garden State. She was at Paramount for 5 years as an executive, and she's in London now producing a Keanu Reeves movie. Life is like the biggest stand-up comedian you will ever meet. They just throw surprises at you, and they're all opportunities to reevaluate. Some of you will have a place, and I had a teacher once who told me there may not be a place for you in this world. So you may have to make one. Yeah, I know, I freaked out too when he said that. But it's true. You may have to make your own. Martin Luther King had a great analogy. I'm not going to say it exactly right, but about if there are things you need to change, if you need more discipline, if you need more commitment. Sometimes that can look like a giant staircase you will never be able to climb. And Martin Luther King said, don't look at the staircase, look at the step. And just take that one step at a time. What else can I tell you? Oh, there are actual psychotics in positions of power. You will have to learn how to talk to them as if you are talking to an insane child holding a kitchen knife. You have to have that blank expression that says, interesting, and make it a comedy for Sinbad. Yeah, I'll think about that. All right. One last thing before I finish up. And it's about technology. Technology has changed our industries and created so much fear. Music, film, television. It's done amazing things. Technology, though, in a way, has dictated, it has made access to creative content more important. It makes us, it keeps creating new things and telling us we want them. All I have to say about this, and this is something I just asked you. A friend of mine produces original soundtracks for Broadway. And he's doing a hit. And I said, wow, this would be great for your company. And he said, I don't know. In this age, I don't know how many people are going to buy the CD or how many people are going to steal it. Technology has made us, the creative people, feel like they don't necessarily have to earn a living. They just create and then give it over. And I'm asking you, as you go out there, creative people, anyone who can create something, create the content that the internet can make money off of, that person deserves to earn a living.
Woo!
Last thing, why do we do it? Can't be fame. It can't be fame. Fame is like walking in the desert, dying of thirst, instead of water, somebody hits you with coke. First few sips are amazing, but it doesn't sustain. You can't be approval to make your place in the world. Listen to me. You Canada.